we're here today at the Desmond home at 10211 South Bell.
Yes.
We're with Mrs. Desmond and Mrs. Thibeau, who have been kind enough to offer up some of their time to say a few words about Dorothy Jane. And ladies, I greatly appreciate you taking the time. And maybe if we could start with you, Mrs. Desmond, if you just have a couple of stories about your memories of Dorothy.
Well, I remember when the Lydon family moved in. Now, this could be one of those old wives' tale, but I remember the story when you moved into the house on Levitt. Mr. McCarthy, Bud McCarthy, who lived next door, who was a wonderful man, they were wonderful neighbors. And he looked at his family and said, and I go, I'm sure I'm quoting him right, "That's no family, that's a goddamn orphanage." Now, I'm sure that is what I remember. He said, and in his quiet, little, kind way. He didn't have a mean bone in his body. Just in his kind, because he probably saw you getting out of the car one by one. And that was his comment. So now that, I hope it's not an old wives' tale, but that is what I remember about the McCarthys next door, who were dear neighbors of your mother's and father, as you know.
I recall them, yes, I do
Yes,
remember.
How many children did they have?
They had one child, an only child, Anne McCarthy, who is a lifelong friend of Margaret Desmond's, because they grew up across the alley from one another.
Right, yeah.
And Margaret and Anne McCarthy and Maureen Cleary are as close today as they were 60 years ago.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is.
So now that is the first thing I remember about the Lydon family moving, and I hope to God I remembered correctly. But I wouldn't have remembered it all these years. But, and I honestly, this is the honest to God truth, I think of Dorothy Lydon every time I drive out of the garage, which is every day practically. Because driving, and honest to God, I do. I think of Dorothy Lydon all the time. Because as I'm driving out, I'll always think, I hope I don't meet Dorothy, because the two of us almost would collide in the alley. Dorothy's running here and I'm running, who knows, to the grocery store.
Yeah.
And we almost collided so many times, the two of us racing out. And we always joked, the insurance men would have so much fun. Hugh DeVan for Dorothy Lydon and Tom Broderick for me. We'd kid and say, oh, I hope those insurance men don't have too much of a problem. We never hit, but oh, we came close many times. So and honest, I think of Dorothy every time I pull out of the garage. I hope Dorothy's not coming down.
You look both ways, huh, Pam?
Oh, yes. So, and then my other little story that I always remember with the Lydons was the ice skating pond.
Oh, I remember
Yes,
that.
and how Dorothy and John had rules.
Yeah.
They had rules in the backyard, time rules. Hockey players from 1 to 2.
Yeah.
Girls skate 2 to 3. Hockey playing 3 to 4.
Yeah.
And those were the rules. And if you're going to skate on the pond, you had to abide by these rules. So, many happy memories of Dorothy and John.
Did you abide by the rules, Tom?
I absolutely. I was a team player most of the time.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of wonderful memories. Not only in the backyard on the ice, but also behind the Desmond home here. The countless hours and weeks and days and years we spent shooting baskets and having our great basketball games.
Yes, yeah. So many happy memories.
Yeah.
How about you, Mrs. Thibeau? Do you recall maybe the first time you...
I think so. Like I told you before, we moved in October of '66.
66.
And we came from a little, bi-level
Okay.
out in Queen of Murders. And we needed a house. You couldn't add on to that. And it seemed that was a big influx of big Catholic families
Yes.
moving to Beverly because there were a lot of people who didn't want to live in an integrated neighborhood.
Yes.
And they were fleeing like mad.
Yeah.
So, in fact, we spent an awful lot of time looking at houses. We put the kids in the car, and I forget, we were working with some real estate agent, but I can't remember his name. But anyway, that was Sunday afternoon.
And Mrs. Thibeau, you and your husband Don, correctly?
Right.
You guys had how many children?
We moved in here with 6.
6.
Elizabeth was a year old. And then Anne was born 2 years later.
So
So we had 7.
7, and same Mrs. Desmond?
Yes,
7.
We had 7. But we moved in, I think Mary was born here. Michael, Margaret, Tom, Kathleen. So I think we moved in with 4, and then Mary was born here. And then Anne and John.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, I wonder what the average median number of children were. I mean, you guys 7, we had 8.
It was nothing. Big families,
Oh,
Tam, were nothing. You know that. I mean,
Right.
and that's why it's
Yes.
funny because on both sides of me, I love it now. I have 2 young couples, and they're both, real nice. And they each have 2 children.
Oh, yes, sure.
And I can remember standing out in front talking to, this Amy, and she said, oh, Mrs. Thibeau, how many children did you have? And I said 7, and she kind of looked and she said, you must have had a lot of confidence in yourself. And I thought, what did you mean? But it wasn't just,
It was the norm.
the Desmonds and the Thibeaus and Lydons,
Oh.
these houses were filled
Yes,
with big
yes.
families.
Yeah.
There was, we knew the Charpies, and they were very good friends.
Yes, I know my dad and Jean Tarpey were real
Yeah.
tight.
So that's how I know your mom, I think I met her over at, I forget the name of the couple that lived next door to Dombrowski's. And then they moved, they were
Oh, the
there.
Cottons.
Cottons.
Yes.
Oh,
And
Yes.
Dorothy was over at Cotton's one day, and I happened to, go by. And then it was nice. I think it was Jackie Cotton. She had kind of a tea or something for me to get to know all the Caseys and all those
Mm-hmm.
people on that side of 103rd.
Yes. On the south side of
Yeah.
103rd. And
And
the,
that's the first time I met her.
okay.
But then there was this, do you know, Marie and Jean Tarpey? Yes, we do. And that was the start of it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure Mom and Dad bought the house at 10226 South Levitt in 1960, because again, I think Carol was the first of the children born there, and then I was born the following year in 61.
okay.
And then Chris and Liz followed. So they moved in with 4 and then had 4 more on Levitt Street. And then Mrs. Thibeau, I know you guys spent a lot of time together. The couples, though, which I've always been envious, and I thought it was so special of the Thibeaus and Dombrowskis and the Lydons and the Caseys.
Right,
You
yeah.
guys shared
I think it was probably not wanting to go out on New Year's Eve.
Yes,
Stay in the neighborhood to watch people like you and all the other kids in our families. And so that's what we used to do. We used to, New Year's Eve would be, say, at Casey's and then Dombrowski. We'd take turns.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
then be watching for what time we told these people they had to be home.
Mm-hmm. Those rules again.
yes.
Got to have them.
You can't have big families and not have rules, Tom.
No, I wouldn't think so.
But then another with the, you didn't get in on it. I don't know if any of the Desmond kids, do you remember, I don't know if you'd remember, Pat, when the Highlands at Carson's, the restaurant.
Oh, yes.
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 And I think it started out with Chris,
Maybe Matt and Tony, I think, were there.
Matt and Tony. And
Yes.
And that crowd, Neil Masterson was
Yes.
in, and they were, you know, what do they call them?
Busboys?
Busboys.
Yes.
And then that was passed down to Chris and Phil. I think Liz and Carol got in on it too, didn't they?
Yeah, I know.
Not as busboy, but I think it's...
Yeah, I worked there for a while also.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and it kind of was, like you said, it was like tradition and
It
families.
was passed down.
Yeah.
And
Whereas brother Jackie, being the older, he worked at Creighton's. He used to be a busboy at Creighton's, and he's got some great stories of those
I'm sure.
those times.
But, oh, I know, and then Paul, yeah, I don't think any of your kids ended up at the restaurant, did
I
they?
think
Well, Mary
John-
did. Mary
Mary?
worked up the
Highland?
Islands at the plaza, but she and Mary Lydon worked at the Martinique.
Oh,
They were
yeah.
waitresses there.
Really?
The Martinique, the two of them, would go over there
Mm-hmm,
and be waitresses.
yeah.
And Mrs. Desmond, the great Tommy Desmond story, which was
I'm sure.
fantastic.
Which,
With the golf ball. Do you remember? We were, and it was
yes, Tommy.
Could you please tell us?
Oh, yes. Well, Tommy Desmond had a brief stint, is that the word? At Rockhurst College in Kansas City. Didn't last long, but that's all right. And he brought home one of his buddies from Kansas City, Rockhurst College. And they were playing ball in our backyard. These were college kids. And this poor, I can't remember the kid's name, but he hit a ball from our backyard right into Lydon's kitchen, smashed their window, and of course scared poor Mr. Lydon to death because it was a huge crash.
Yeah.
So, oh dear, yes, I forgot about that rocker story.
I
yes.
think it might have been around dinner time
You remember
Yes.
the crash?
Oh yeah, and
Oh,
there was our back porch, and it just it broke a window on the back porch, which was no big deal.
But
But it was quite a mystery until a few minutes later.
where did it come from?
These guys are looking for their ball. Tommy and his friend,
Yes,
and
can't remember.
lo and behold, we had it, and we were able to return it to the rightful owner.
Oh dear. And I think we volunteered to fix the window.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure
dear.
Lydon's did their share of
Well,
damage around the Desmond household over the years. Well, thank you, ladies, for your time.
thank you for your.
And once I get this together, please know you guys will be getting a copy of this. So,
Okay.
so you'll be able to see the whole DVD once it's put together.
Okay.
So, thank you once again,
It's
Mrs.
our
Desmond and Mrs.
pleasure,
Thibeau.
Tom.
Oh, Tom,
Yes.
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 Yeah.
And it's the honest to God truth. I think of Dorothy Lydon every time I pull out of the garage.
I love hearing that.
Every time I
That's
pull
great.
out.